Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Good afternoon, everyone, to the November 20th Police and Fire Commission meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Second agenda item, allegiance. I pledge allegiance to America. Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is approval of our October Police and Fire Commission meeting minutes. So in the packet, pages 3, 4, and 5 of the packet. Thanks, Commissioner Russell, for running the meeting. Any comments or motions?
Approval of the minutes.
I second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Agenda item number 4 is public appearances for non-agenda items, and we have one guest with us today, Rita Hendricks, and wishes to speak. So please, Rita, come and why don't you join us, if you could, at the table. Thank you.
I'm Rita Hendricks, live at 5655 Monadale in Fitchburg, and I came because I wanted to express the fact that many of us voted against the referendum, but it was not against the police or the fire. In fact, we very strongly support the police and fire. Our method was our reasoning for many of us was to ask the city to be fiscally responsible and not use police and fire as a reason to get extra money when police and fire should be in the budget. Not as an add-on, but we need to take care of needs first. And so many of us felt very strongly that we wanted the police and fire to know we support them very strongly, but we want our city to be fiscally responsible. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay. Sarah, I don't think we have any other guests online. Is that right?
Correct. No other public comment.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Other than Lieutenant Ladwig for agenda items as well. Okay. Let's move to agenda item number 5, the report from the police department.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's pretty standard staffing report from the police department. We can go over the sworn staffing summary. It's pretty status quo from last month. Our 3 vacancies, 2 in field training and 2 at the academy. Speaking of the 2 at the academy, they are set to graduate from Madison College Law Enforcement Recruit Academy on December 13th. So they will start their field training / orientation process on December 16th. I believe their badge pinning, we're going to try to schedule that for the 17th, Tuesday, December 17th in the afternoon sometime. There will be more information on that one for for any invitation for any of the commissioners to attend that. That does not, again, that doesn't help us out with our vacancies, although they are quite small in comparison to previous years. But they'll hopefully get through the field training process in a timely fashion so they can start counting towards our field positions. Anybody have any questions on the staffing summary?
We've got, for sergeant, on the sergeant line, it's got 9 authorized, 9 filled, but a vacant, or unfilled, I guess. Is that?
So it's due, more than likely, it's due because of the one sergeant that's on, we actually have 2 sergeants that are on restricted or leave.
Okay.
One on administrative duty, one on medical reason.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
I think what you were getting at, Tom, and I noticed this.
The unfilled position, it shouldn't be unfilled. All of our sergeant positions are filled. I'm not sure what the, but I think that was just done, that probably was done by mistake. We have all 9 sergeant positions filled.
Gotcha.
2 of them are on restricted duty for 2 different reasons.
A bigger line is the police officer line. And I see that, I mean, I see filled and unfilled.
Correct.
And it doesn't add. I get it. We're adding vacancies, field training, law enforcement academy, and restricted duty. All that adds up to 9.
Yep.
I wonder if it doesn't make more sense to, are they really filled if they aren't contributing members of the
Correct.
staff? Should we?
Yeah, we can try to clean that one up for you to make it a little bit more sense.
Or maybe just even
I think anytime somebody's on restricted duty, they're not filling that position.
Yeah.
It's not a vacancy at that point. It's just an unfilled position that if there was another sergeant or another officer that happened to be on vacation, they can't fill that particular shift at that time, even though they're on restricted duty. So in a way, it is somewhat of an unfilled position. It's not a vacancy, but it's not being filled by doing their actual job duties, filling that function or that role in that capacity.
I think the 9's correct.
9 is
That's
correct
saying the
from
right
officers. And sergeants technically is correct. I guess it's not, there's 1 unfilled position or there's actually 2 unfilled positions. Is 1 sergeant, and this probably wasn't updated with one of our sergeants on medical reasons being on leave. So there's 2 that are not filling their functions as a patrol sergeant right now, but there's no vacancies in that role.
So instead of 1 and 1, it should be 2 and 2.
2 and 2, correct.
And then my only other question relative, and this note's been on there for a while, the rotating detective not filled.
And the neighborhood assignments?
In the neighborhoods, are they is that rotating detective position an authorized position? We show 5 detectives
Yeah,
and 5.
so the rotating detective actually comes out of the patrol officers.
Okay.
And it's not a full detective position. We basically give an officer that opportunity to learn the detective role, fill it for a temporary assignment, and then go back to the patrol officers.
So that would come out of the PO ranks.
Yeah, so we were more or less from a department standpoint, we were kind of waiting on the referendum, what was going to be coming out of that for our neighborhood assignments as well, to try to understand, okay, are we going to be able to get 3 additional officers, or are we going to have to resurrect the neighborhood officer positions from our current staffing? And now that we kind of have a direction of where we're going to be going, the number of officers and staff members that we're going to have to handle for the foreseeable future, we'll probably bring that not in a way that's going to take a significant amount of officers from the patrol ranks. Maybe we'll have to downsize the number of neighborhood officers. We had 2 in the past, and maybe that's what we're going to have to start with, just to see and try to maintain the staffing that we have. That's the biggest concern. Anytime you have those specialized assignments, the patrol function is your foundational function. So if you start kind of pulling away from those numbers and those officers, that puts more stress, it causes more overtime and things that we don't want. So if we can maintain staffing, have those swing shift officers really covering a lot of our busier times, it's going to provide us that opportunity within the department to bring those roles back. Getting the 3 additional vacancies filled as well is going to help, and hopefully we can do that. Sarah and I can work together at the beginning of next year to really hone in on a hiring process, really push out our message to the community, to those that are interested, and hopefully we can get those positions filled.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions on the staffing?
I do. I have a question.
Yep.
So I see that a sergeant is out, and you mentioned that there were 2. So what does the coverage look like when a sergeant, their position is more of a supervising and leadership? Who is covering?
So the other sergeants, right now we have 3 sergeants assigned to each shift. And luckily, one of the sergeant vacancies is on day shift, and one of the sergeant vacancies, or the one that's on leave is on day shift, and one that's on leave is on second shift. So there's still 2 other sergeants that are able to cover. And if that other sergeant working that rotation is off, then we would just create overtime for the day shift sergeant to cover and the night shift officer or sergeant to come in early. So we enforce overtime because supervisory coverage is mandatory. So we would just have them work overtime.
Thank you.
Yeah. So moving on to the overtime report. Pretty standard. Obviously, we have a little bit more overtime in the month of October between 2023 and 2024, despite the staff vacancies. We still do have a similar amount of unfilled positions. One thing to note, there's about 400 hours less overtime in October than there was September. So we're getting into that steering in that right direction. We did have in-service and Ironman in the month of September, which we didn't have that in October. So that kind of accounts for it. But hopefully we're trending in the right direction. Once we get up to that full staffing, ideally there's going to be less overtime, but there's also calls for service, there's also court, there's a whole variety of things that go on. One of the things that we're looking at is less and less shift coverage over time. As we get to that full staffing level, there should be, in theory, less and less shift coverage over time. So, any questions on the overtime report? And then, any questions on the monthly update, monthly summary?
Just a couple notes, and again, I find this helpful each month. So there, I found it fascinating on the bottom of the page 5 of 9 in the packet, page 10 in the packet, there was an OWI, a third offense, and a Fitchburg officer on routine patrol was flagged down by a citizen reporting a vehicle, which I think is wonderful that citizens are taking that opportunity to be proactive. And it resulted in an individual who was driving while a license was revoked due to alcohol, which kind of is, a proactive effort in the furtherance of our safer streets. Mm-hmm. And then on the last page of the report, it's page 12 in the packet, it was another kind of, it was in the news how the Fitchburg Police Department's proactive efforts were helping the community. So thank you and thank all law enforcement for the proactive efforts. I know there's a little bit of heat because some people don't like the proactive policing, sure, but in my mind, it's beneficial. And then going back to page 11 at the bottom is, again, I think a wonderful example where an officer was in the community conducting a traffic stop and was approached by a woman wishing to report domestic violence, which ultimately led to, strangulation, suffocation, substantial battery, disorderly conduct charges. And again, I think it's just a great example of the proactive policing that our officers are engaged in to keep our communities safe. So thank you for it.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments on the monthly summary?
I have a question just because I'm just not knowledgeable. Sure. What's the difference between a murder and a homicide?
Usually very little. It's semantics at that point.
So the one in August of 2023, is that the same, the murder and the homicide, is it the same?
Yeah, they're the same. They
the same
fall under the
incident,
same.
just one.
A couple other housekeeping items. The police department is doing our food drive, annual food drive to help out our friends at the Allied Food Pantry. That's going to be ending on December 6th. And then, again, I stated earlier, the academy graduation December 13th for the two at Madison College.
For the Allied Drive effort, I saw there were the Pack the Squad or
Yeah,
Stuff
the Squad.
Are there more of those events, or is it just?
No, so we'll have opportunities here, and there's other partners throughout the city, and I apologize, I don't have a list, but there's other businesses that'll have the opportunity for you to donate there. There's some schools in the area, but you can easily come here to the city hall and drop off any non-perishable food items, personal hygiene items. Those are definitely all welcome by our friends.
Yeah. Any other questions for Chief? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chief, welcome.
Thank you.
Are you run us through, Lieutenant Ladwig, going to run us through the fire department report?
No, I'll run you through.
Okay.
I apologize for being late. I got my wires crossed. I thought it was a 5:30 start.
No problem.
I thought it was
Perfect timing, in fact.
Quick update on what's happening with the department. So in the month of October, we ran 140 EMS calls, I'm sorry. 68 still alarms, 6 motor vehicle accidents, and 2 structure fires. Or if we compare this month to last year, we're actually 10 calls lower than last year, but we're still up over last year by a considerable amount. Looks like it's around 350 calls over last year's total call volume. Our average response time to get out the door and to a scene in 6 minutes and 45 seconds. So we're hitting our marks on all places. Right now we have an approved staffing of 19. Of those 18 spots are filled. Obviously you guys know that the chief's position is not filled at this time. We have an approved staffing of 20 POS, paid on call, paid on premises staff. We're actually approved for up to 50. So we're a little low on that end, hoping to get some. Currently we have 5 interns with approved staffing of 6 and 9 of 10 support staff positions that are filled. In October, we did 378 fire inspections, 6 public education events, and I'll touch on that here shortly, and 634 training hours, which is pretty impressive. In terms of public education and events for October, we're pretty proud of our open house. This year went pretty well, thank you. We teamed up with Oak Bank and were able to have our event coincide with theirs, which meant sort of a bumped up presence from the public for both events. So in talking with Oak Bank, we think we're going to do that again. My understanding is this is the first year that we held the open house at Station 2 as opposed to Station 1. Seemed to work out well, so I think we're going to probably do that again. And then just as something to touch on, we had a group of our younger people over at Future Quest today at the Alliant Energy Center. And I want badly to show you guys some of the video I took on my phone. Our kids knocked it out of the park. They were amazing. In fact, the organizers of Future Quest, which is a huge event, they sought us out specifically and said, we are really impressed with what you guys have going. Apparently the entire building was abuzz with sort of the energy that our guys were bringing. So
That's awesome.
Super proud of them.
Yeah.
I was beaming today.
Well, if you can send the videos to us, that'd be great.
Yeah, it,
Somehow.
sometimes I think I'm technologically proficient, sometimes I think I'm potentially a little stunted, so I will do my best.
Yes,
How about that?
understood, fair enough.
Let me look through a couple of these other things. Some of the other events that we do in fire extinguisher trainings, we've had several of them lately. Engine visits to some of the daycares around. As you guys probably know, October is Fire Prevention Month, so we were very busy with all of that stuff. We were invited to a new event, a trunk or treat event over at, gosh, forgive me, I forget the name of, it's right next to the Seminole Tap.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in that complex. They had a trunk or treat over there. We sent a truck over there and lots of good feedback from that. On personnel notes, we have firefighter Stewart on leave of absence. We'll probably talk later about a recommendation for a second-year intern. And we did receive one resignation from the POX side.
Oh, okay, so firefighter orders on the POX side?
Yes, sir.
A question for you. During the referendum discussions, I saw a reference to firefighters at $12 an hour. Is that, and there was some, debate over whether it was accurate or not. Are any of the staff at $12 an hour? Do you know offhand? Or maybe Sarah could probably answer it.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm going to bounce to you with all due respect.
Absolutely. So we do have some paid on-call staff that they do start at $12 an hour, but once they get their certifications, they can get up to past $15 an hour. But typically, brand new starting POX is $12. We were hoping to increase the paid on-call starting wage with the referendum. I'm not sure if we'll be able to find the money in the budget to do that. I think it was relying on the referendum. So the goal, though, is to make sure that the minimum is at least $15 an hour.
And paid on call, paid on premise, some of those are on premise, literally like on site at the firehouse. But then there's others who are not on site.
Yeah.
They're on call.
Exactly, yep.
Okay. And is there a
Yes, you're
distinction
exactly
between
right.
distinction between the starting pay rate for on premise versus on call?
No, paid on call and paid on premise are exactly the same.
That's helpful, thank you.
So they're both part-time, and they both start at the same amount. It's really based on what certifications you have that get you to that higher level. But it looks like Jason is going to chime in here, and I appreciate that, Jason.
Oh, you're still on mute, Lieutenant Plywood?
Yeah.
I'm just showing my face. I can answer questions. I'm just here to show them.
Sure. Okay.
So just hit on that, Tom. Paid on call, you usually live in the city. Paid on premise, usually live outside the city. That's kind of the designation. They both do work shifts in the firehouse with us, but they all are paid the same rate, that $12 an hour starting, and then it goes up based on their certifications.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. When is the collective bargaining agreement for fire up?
We're currently in negotiations right now, so it's up at the end of the year.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, any other questions for the fire report? Okay. Next agenda item is 5B, but it's, closed session. So if we go into closed session, we'll ask, we have guests in the room, and maybe, are any of our guests interested in speaking? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go into closed session. That usually has people leave the room, and then we'll go back into open session. We'll open up these doors so you all know when we're ready for the open session. But I'll move that pursuant to section 1985, sub 1, sub C, Wisconsin statutes, the commission move into closed session for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, more specifically to approve the second-year fire science resident intern.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of going into closed session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we'll ask you all to leave and then we'll. All right, we are back from closed session. And why don't we move to agenda item 5C, any action coming out of closed session?
Yes. So I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right, I move to approve the chief's recommendation to approve the second-year fire science resident intern.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, then we're moving to agenda item number 5D, 5 or 6? 6D, sorry. And that is the fire chief recruitment update. I think, Sarah, you're gonna take us through this? Or you're still on mute?
Jason, is there anything that you wanted to say before I get started?
No, go ahead, and then I
Okay.
can answer questions or
Perfect.
comment later.
All right. Well, I wanted to give a big thanks to Commissioner Banks. We had such a great meeting. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago already? We used the equitable hiring tool. We had a small group. We had a community member, and we had another HR expert from the city of Sun Prairie. It was wonderful. So from the hiring tool recommendations, and Banks, please feel free to let us know how you felt the meeting went as well. We decided to keep the 5 years of senior management experience, but we decided to define what senior management experience was. We added into the job description the ability to work with multicultural populations as a requirement. It was a suggestion to make sure that we have 3 essay questions to be submitted at the time of applying. This is if we have more than 8 applicants that apply for fire chief, because we need to get it down to a smaller pool for interviews. Updating the recruitment process to shorten it for the in-person activities. So what we're trying to do is have a first panel interview that would be strictly Zoom or virtual to accommodate any out-of-state candidates so that we don't have that barrier of people having to travel here multiple times, or to have a 2-day process. So we thought this would be able to get the most qualified here for the in-person activities. And then we'd like to involve a fire chief from a neighboring municipality, community members, a local 311 rep, and Deputy Chief Grossen in the selection process. And then for the city tour, we'd like to include a union rep and a fire intern. It's really important that we like to include fire staff throughout the recruitment process. So those were some of the highlights that came out of using the hiring tool. We talked about certification for a while, whether or not the fire chief should have the same certifications that the firefighters do. And interestingly, we looked at prior recruitments for fire chief and even neighboring fire chiefs, and that's typically not a requirement at that level, because they're not typically going and fighting the fires with the firefighters, but they're actually at that operational level and administrative level. So we didn't want to add new certifications as a requirement, always desired but not required. So any questions about just the bullets up here that we have? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for that last one before I kind of lose it. So, and I saw that. So are there other members of the fire department without that level of certification?
Not that I'm aware of. So the deputy chief and everyone under, they all have those certifications. The fire certs, it's just at that fire chief level that it's not required. Joe Pavlemacher had it. I believe all of our fire chiefs prior have always had those certifications. But it was interesting for all of us to be looking and at neighboring fire chief positions, and that's not a typical requirement that you see at a fire chief level.
But was it in our prior position description?
It wasn't.
Okay.
No.
That to me struck me as odd. I mean, I would want my fire chief to be able to suit up and go fight a fire if, for whatever reason, the demand was there to do it. And it also strikes me odd that a chief would not have what I think is a basic credential for the fire department. So that was one that struck me as odd. And, I know other cities might not want it or need it or look at it, but I think we can be a leading, I don't know. That's just my individual view, I guess, is to kind of seeing that when it came through.
Sure, can I comment on that?
Yep, please, John.
Your candidates are probably going to have some sort of fire certifications from wherever they're coming from. The issue you might run into is if they're coming from out of state, if they're transferable. Yeah. So let's just say somebody let's take the last process, the one previously to Chief Pulvermacher, we hired a guy or offered a guy from Utah. Is it the same as Wisconsin? How is that certification transferable, and what does he have to do or she have to do to transfer that to Wisconsin? So I'm not concerned about that because they've been a firefighter at some point in their career, so they do have the certifications.
Yeah. There was a job description markup, but I only had made it in the packet. Is that right, or am I just missing it?
So we have the draft job description. I don't have that in the packet today because we're still trying to figure out if EMS is actually going to be part of the fire chief role. So I have a meeting with the mayor on Friday to find out what is going on with EMS, if we're going to bring that in-house effective 2026. So there's more work that has to be done with that job description. So I wasn't ready to bring it to the PFC tonight. But definitely in December, once we know more about that, we can bring that final job description for the PFC to approve. We did make a couple of changes though based on using the equitable hiring tool, which was really just defining what senior management experience was and then adding the ability to work with multicultural populations. And that was it for updates to the job description.
Are there minimum requirements that are listed in the job description, like fire experience? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So 5 years of senior management experience in the fire service. So yeah, we definitely need someone who has experience with the fire department.
Yeah, okay.
And the pay is what?
So do we have a sense of what salary currently is at?
Currently, I can certainly get that for you. Just one moment. I've got it handy right here. Our fire chief recruitment starts at, I've got only hourly figures for you here, but $53.24 starting. I can tell you what that is annually here. They work 80 hours in a year, so that's going to be $110,739.20 starting.
Very nice. Someone here.
And then if someone has high qualifications, we'll hire them up to $126,568. We'll have a 2% increase effective January, so add 2% to those figures I just gave you.
Gotcha.
That's the range.
Okay.
Okay, so let me get back to that PowerPoint. Okay. So one of the really important pieces of this puzzle here is the staff survey and PFC meetings with fire staff. We'd really like to gather, what type of leader is the fire department looking for? what types of priorities. So I have a draft employee survey that I'd like to share with the PFC tonight and get approval, because I'd like to have this survey open effective December 2nd to start before we actually start the recruitment, so that we can incorporate some of the feedback we receive, whether it's drafting the interview questions, the process, doing any types of different things that we did last time. So I'm going to click on this draft employee survey, and I'd like the commissioners to hopefully approve the survey or edit it yet tonight. Basically, it's just your input's vital to the Police and Fire Commission as we begin the search for our next fire chief.
Sir,
we invite you to share your thoughts on the most important.
So sorry,
Yeah.
but it looked like you might have clicked on it. It's not showing up for us in the room. I don't know.
Is it not showing up? Okay, I'm
It's a
gonna.
screen thing,
Yeah, hang tight. All right, you should see a Google survey right now up on the screen. Do you see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so we are asking for them to share the most important personal characteristics, leadership qualities, and top priorities for this critical role. The feedback will be used to develop interview questions, select the most qualified candidate. So the survey takes less than 5 minutes. Additionally, the Fitchburg Police and Fire Commission welcomes the opportunity to hear from fire staff in a more personal setting. So I'd also be looking for some dates and times in December or January for up to 2 commissioners at a time. Unless we wanted the whole commission together, we would just have to notice for quorum if we wanted to have some meetings with fire staff to gather feedback. But the survey starts with personal characteristics for them to choose up to 5 that they feel are most important for the fire chief to possess. We kind of go into the definitions of what these personal characteristics are, so it's clear. Everything from diversity, professionalism, vigilance, attention to detail, collaboration, customer focus, results, organizational understanding, planning and organizing, problem solving, analytical, reliability, integrity, flexibility, and technical expertise. And then we get into leadership qualities. We ask, go ahead.
For those characteristics, we want something about like substantive fire knowledge and experience, or is that not right for that section?
That's a part of technical expertise, but we can certainly, we can spell that out.
Technical is not like IT stuff, but technical to the position.
Yeah,
That's the way I saw it.
Technical to the profession.
Yep. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. And then leadership qualities, up to 3 that we feel are most important. So change leadership, coaching, collaborative leadership, delegation, innovation, communication, and community engagement. These, just for the record, these are the same ones that we used for the police chief survey when we did that. So these aren't new. This is basically a copy of the employee survey for the police chief. And then what do you believe should be the top priorities? We keep this open-ended so someone can actually type out and provide more narrative to the survey. And then they can also provide additional comments. And then lastly, we just ask about demographics. Are they a full-time employee? Are they a part-time? They don't have to answer these demographics. But if they want to, it helps us identify if, certain groups, like maybe all the full-timers want certain leadership qualities, or it's just it helps us identify what the needs are of the different department staff. So it's a lot. And if you don't want to approve it yet today because you want to take a closer look at it, that's just fine. I just hope to get it up by December 2nd. So it gives a full month before we post the position. But like I said, this was the same one we used for police chief. And it seemed to work pretty well. It was a great mechanism to gather feedback from staff.
I just have a quick question. What was the thought for there being up to 5 characteristics to select for personal, but only 3 for leadership?
That's a good question. I think it was because there were so many more personal, but we could just make it up to 3 for both of them, or we can make it up to 5 for both. Or, it's not a magic number, but we can make it consistent for sure. If anyone has a strong feeling toward, 3 or 5 or changing that number, we can totally do that.
Yeah, I mean, 5 is nice for variety, just to see like a bigger spread.
Absolutely.
And for leadership qualities, like I said, Sarah, it looks like what, there's 6 or 7. So if we do 5 for that, it might be too, almost, not helpful in terms of prioritizing. So I kind of like the 5 for that reason.
Then my question would be, since this is a leadership role, why were there more personal qualities than leadership? Why the flip? Why more personal than leadership?
Yeah, that's a good question. We can add to this list, so I'm happy to add more. In fact, we could add the same amount.
Yeah.
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 14 for personal. I can have 14 leadership qualities, and then we can have them select up to 5 for each. Would that be good?
Yes.
That sounds good.
Okay. 14 qualities. Perfect. I will add to those leadership qualities, and then what I'll do is I'll send the commissioners a link to the survey so that you can see what was added, and then if you can just respond back just to me to let me know if it looks good, or if you want to see any changes.
So Sarah mentioned that we followed this similar process for the police chief, whatever it was, 3 or 4 years ago, where we met with individuals or groups of police officers, staff, in order to hear from them directly. We can't have more than 2 of us do that at the same time, or else it's an open meeting that we have to, post and give notice for and things. So that was a really helpful aspect of it. And like Sarah said, we're looking for dates in December and January to meet with everyone, and command staff, leadership, and then the firefighters and paid on call, paid on premises, and the interns as well. And then the survey was really helpful, obviously, for that feedback in writing as well. So I think process-wise, it's following a similar path that I think worked for the last chief role.
So Jason, perhaps.
Okay, well, what I'll do, I'm sorry.
That we determine the 2 that are going to be involved in this engagement. So those 2, along with you, Sarah, can work on dates to meet the staff.
Okay. And it can be one-on-one as well. So if like, for example, if Sean's available one evening and wants to come down to, we could have you meet in the library meeting room. It doesn't have to be at a fire station. So we have a lot of flexibility. And if all of you wanted to meet together, we would just need to notice it. So that's an option too. But yeah, if you could just reach out to me and give me some dates and times, then I can work with Jason on their availability, and we can get that scheduled.
Sounds good.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
So
I'm gonna go back
I
to
handle the union side of it. So if it's going to be the paid on call, paid on premise, that has to be Chief Grossen. So I'm not sure if the commissioner wants to meet separately with the union staff compared to the paid on call, paid on premise intern staff or not. So that's going to have to be determined as well. But I can certainly facilitate the union side of it.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. So it sounds like there is a preference for the PFC commissioners to meet with the union, the full-time staff, and then maybe the part-time staff separately. Is that what my understanding is?
What do you all think?
Excuse me, I don't know why it would have to be different. It can be, but if we show up at a firehouse and there's both classes of firefighters there, I don't want to segregate the room and make sure we only talk to the union folks and then the paid on call folks. That seems kind of odd, unless there's a reason.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think,
Jason?
for efficiency purposes, I think just having people share. To me, there's not much of a distinction. They're all firefighters, and if there are reasons to distinguish, they can share them with us.
Jason, is there reasoning why you were thinking it might be?
The only thing I think of is that if you look at when you did with the police department, they're all full-time employees, right? So they're all there. If you're not going to get, you're potentially not going to get open feedback from members because they're different. We're the same, but we're different. You know what I'm saying? So when I asked the question to Sarah, when she approached me, that was my exact question. Are we doing this together or separate? And I kind of got both answers. So I was coming to you guys to see how you wanted to do it, because if we're doing it together, then I can't facilitate that. That has to go through Chief Grossen. But if it's going to be the union members, then I can facilitate that.
Jason, are you thinking that people might not talk as openly if both parties are together?
Yep.
Okay, then that's a
Because
reason
people
to
have
do it
different-
separate. We would want to hear all the feedback available, Jason, so if you feel like we should do it separately, then I agree with you.
All right.
Because people have different views of the direction of the department. So,
For feedback.
Sorry, Lieutenant, go ahead.
and I also recommend to do it off-site, like at the library or something. And then from both, I think you should have more than one night for both groups, because guys are working, then when they're off night, they can come. So we can facilitate that too. So I know it's more time out of everybody's schedules, but I think that's the best route.
Okay.
And I truly don't want to hold anybody back, but I just think you're going to get more feedback if they're separate. And if someone disagrees, I'm open to hear that too. So,
Sarah, how long do you anticipate a session to be? And then did I hear you, Jason, say they have to do the session off the clock, like at their free time and not?
So if we do it off property, so let's say at the library or something, we can call it a union function, and then there's no question about compensation from the fire side. And then it's up to the chief whether, if you have it at the paid on call side, if you have it at the fire station, I mean, that's I don't think there's a compensation issue. It's just, we'll just call it a union meeting, and you guys are invited to it.
Jason, your next drill, I know you have a drill at the beginning of every month, right? When is the January one?
Well, the
December one.
Well, I'm not sure what's happening with December. January will be the first Tuesday of January, so whatever date that is, 2nd, I think.
Okay. So that would be a way to hit up your paid on call, right?
It would. The only thing you're going to run into then, if you do that, there's going to be 4 career guys working that day. That would be separate from, they'd be sit in another room. That's why I'm saying if you have it like just say 2 nights each, somewhere, and then nobody's going to be segregated. They're all going to be able to have an opportunity to make the meeting or meetings. So,
okay.
Again, if I'm off in right field and you guys think something different, that's just my opinion. So,
Yeah, that works.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep. All right, so we'll get opportunity or availability to Sarah and see what we can make work.
The only other question I got, based on your guys' availability, you're looking at daytime or nighttime?
Whatever works.
Yeah,
Generally as well.
we'll make it work.
Sure, Barra, how about you? Generally, are both day and nighttime generally available?
It kind of just depends on the days. I mean, for me, any Thursday or Friday, I'm pretty much available throughout the day. Monday and Wednesday would be in the evening. My husband teaches, so he's not available to be home with the little one. So, but I mean, ahead of time, I can always try to make something work as well. I don't know my date, Sarah, but I did send Sarah, I'm also going to be out of town after December 17th. So I'm going to look again at my schedule to see when I will be here.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'll wait to get some dates and times from the commissioners, and then I can work with Jason on scheduling, and then I'll work with Chief Grossen on scheduling for the POX side of things.
Sounds good.
If that sounds good? Okay, perfect. So the updated timeline, the only update is that we would have first panel interviews virtual. So we still plan on posting this January 2nd. We'll have it open for a full month. HR will screen for the minimum qualifications. Remember the 5 years of senior management experience in the fire service. And then if we have more than 8 qualified candidates, that's where we're going to need another panel to basically read through those essay questions and score them and identify who we should bring in for interviews. So the scored benchmarks, the benchmarks would be something that you would approve. So I'll have to bring that to an upcoming PFC meeting, likely in January. But that will help us identify then who will come in for the virtual interviews. So if we have to hold the essay review because we get more than 8 qualified applicants, we'll hold that the week of February 10th. And then our virtual first interview will be the week of either, it all depends on if we get the number of applicants we get. So it will be either the week of February 24th if we have the essay review, or the week of February 17th. So however people do on this first panel interview will decide if they come in for the in-person activities. So the in-person activities week of March 10th or the week of March 3rd if we're not having the essay questions. So what I'll need from the commission is one day that you're available for interviews for the in-person day. So this is just going to go to one day instead of a 2-day process. They would start their day with a 1-hour interview with the Police and Fire Commission, and then have them meet and greet with the mayor and the administrator for about 30 minutes, and then do a city tour and a meet and greet with fire staff at the fire station. So that's during the day. And then the evening at around 6 or 6:30, we'll have our public reception, and that'll have a presentation piece, likely asking them to introduce themselves, why they're, what their qualifications are, why they want to be the City of Fitchburg's fire chief. And then have opportunity for candidates to ask questions at the end. We typically have like an interpreter there, sometimes light refreshments. So we typically have it not at City Hall, but we have it somewhere in a different location of Fitchburg. So one of the things we learned with the police chief is to have a hard end time. So we know, okay, this is, 6 to 8, or, and that we truly ended at 8. It got kind of long for the candidates last time because we didn't have a hard end time. So this would just be a 1-day process, which is nice, because prior at the last meeting I brought this to you and it was a 2-day process. So by going through the hiring tool, we identified this to be a 1-day deal.
And to that point.
Any questions about the in-person duties?
Yeah, so that 2-day to 1-day kind of thing, what was the recommendation? It was just that do the first interviews virtually so that the cost of people traveling is not included?
Yeah, because basically if they would have done well, we were trying to do this in a 2-day back-to-back process. So basically they'd go through the first panel interview and a couple of the meet and greet and the tour, and then they would go on, I'd call them at the end of the first day to let them know if they're a finalist for the second round, which would be the following day. Then they would meet with the Police and Fire Commission. They'd have the public reception. So it was just, it's a lot. It's a lot to have them be here for 2 days. This way, that first panel interview, they can be virtual. We can have our professional panel go through an interview and make sure we're bringing in the most qualified in person, as opposed to just bringing in, 8 or less people to a 2-day in-person process. I know it looks like it's a lot of steps, but because of the position, it is a chief, there's a lot of people to be involved, and especially community input, right? The public reception is really important. We want people to come out. We want them to meet the candidates and ask questions, and we want their feedback on the candidates. So that's always a process. This is pretty typical for any chief level that we've ever had for recruitment purposes at Fitchburg. And so the updated timeline is still the same. March 19th, Police and Fire Commission would hopefully then approve the conditional offer. We go through a background investigation and bring that to the April Police and Fire Commission, where then we would hopefully finalize the offer. And then depending on where the person lives, if they need to relocate, we'd be looking at a mid-May to early June start. So that April meeting will be important for that final approval of the fire chief's employment. Any questions so far? And I apologize, I couldn't be there in person today. I always hate doing these things virtually, but yeah, any questions so far? Okay.
What's the
So,
thought
and then I
behind-
highlighted, oh,
What's the thought behind moving away from questions that are prepared at the public session instead of, and having them just do a presentation that's prepared and canned?
well, that's something for the Police and Fire Commission to decide. So that hasn't been decided. There's been some recommendations based on how the process went for the police chief and the city administrator, and the thought that why don't we have them give a presentation about who they are, what their qualifications are, and why Fitchburg, as opposed to, because how it worked last time is we had set questions. We asked the same question of all the candidates. So by the time it got to the third or fourth person, they already knew the question. It was a very similar answer to the others. So we tried to switch up the order, of course, in which we were asking the question, but for consistency's sake, we had to ask everybody the same question. It was a different way to do it. So the commission definitely has time to figure out how the public reception piece will work, whether you prefer a presentation or if you prefer just a simple Q&A with the candidates with everybody there. So, with today's PFC meeting, I wanted to show you the advertisement listing, as well as just wanted to walk through this recruitment process and just see how your thoughts are on this, if you feel good about it, as well as panel members. We want to try to get things on the calendar for people, kind of put some placeholders on. And so kind of curious what your thoughts are on who should be part of those panel interviews and the different steps in the process. And then December will be the big one. So that will be the one where you actually approve the job posting. You'll approve, we'll start to discuss details of public reception, but basically you're going to be authorizing the start of the fire chief recruitment at the December meeting. And then in January, that's where we're going to do a lot of discussion and then approve the public reception process. So, the length of time, do we need a moderator? We typically get an interpreter. And then we'll go into closed session to approve the interview questions and the rating criteria or benchmarks for those interview questions. So that's the only thing we can go into closed session for regarding the recruitment process until we get to the offer stage. Obviously, when we go to talk about the candidates and who we're going to offer to, then we can go into closed session. But otherwise, everything's in open. And then at the February meeting, the position will be closed. So I can tell you how many applicants we had. If we need to, we'll be able to see how many applicants we had. We'll be able to let you know the other details and basically finalize everything for the start of those interviews that we'll have. And then at the special meeting of the March, so March is that I'm going to need a specific day for the whole commission to be available for those interviews. So it'll be either the week of March 3rd or March 10th. So if you kind of think about your schedule, the week of March 3rd or March 10th, we'll want to get one day that everybody will be available so that you can do the interviews. And remember, the difference between March 3rd and March 10th will be on the number of applicants and if we have to utilize the essay review.
And Sarah,
and then March, yeah.
Before I forget, but you mentioned the essay review a couple times. We are still going to see the essays for all the candidates. You're just thinking if we need to dial the number of applicants back from whatever to 8, there's a separate panel that will do that review and get the number down to 8.
Exactly. Yep. So, in case we get like 15 qualified applicants, we're not going to bring 15 people in for our first panel interview. Even though it's virtual, we don't typically bring in that many people. So what we'll do is we'll have a separate panel that the commission approves to basically be able to score essay questions. And then, you'll be able to see those essay questions throughout the whole recruitment process because it's attached to their application. Yep. And then March will approve the conditional offer of employment in closed session. And then the candidate will start to complete conditions like the physical, the drug, the background investigation. And then that April will be the final approval of the new fire chief. So my goal is that we don't have a whole list of new meetings for the PFC to have to meet. I will just need a couple of meetings for you to meet with fire staff in December or January, and then a special meeting in March for you to do the interviews. We'll make sure to notice for quorum. But otherwise, I don't see us having to have a lot of special meetings of the PFC outside of our monthly meetings. So I do have some draft essay questions, and I will send those to you to review. And if you want to give me an idea of which ones you're kind of thinking might be good, I actually have a listing of those ready to show you. And so these are just some sample essay questions. I highlighted in yellow the 3 that I think, just if you're looking for HR guidance, I think would be really great to ask. We need to hear from the PFC as far as what do you want in the next fire chief? What are some of the initiatives that the PFC would like to see come from the fire department? So your feedback is important as well throughout this process. So some of the things that have come up when we use the hiring tool, Rob Coonsey, our battalion chief, was part of that meeting. And he shared, the importance of a strong leader. The leadership and being able to make sure we're getting the right person in is really important. Recruitment and retention, Mayor identified, making sure that we're, we're keeping people here, that they're feeling motivated, they're happy, and that we're diversifying our workforce when we have the vacancies and we have the opportunity. And then there's, some examples on like policy development, because this is a very administrative rich position. And then even like things on budgeting experience, supervisory experience, relationship building. And then, it's a combination department. So, what experience might someone have already in a combination department, and what unique challenges does the staffing model present, and why will they be successful? So I highlighted in yellow the 3 that I thought would be good ones, but this is not an exhaustive list. There's so many other questions we can add to this, but again, we want to make sure they're essay type questions that they can answer when they apply for the position. So what I'll do is I'll send this to the PFC, and then if you want to just take a look at these and share your feedback if you feel, and then at the December meeting, that's when we can actually take action, and you can let me know which questions, and you might come up with your own questions too, and we can add to this document.
Well, no, Commissioner
Any
Barr,
questions about the supplementals?
I was going to say, Commissioner Barr, I think you said December 17th is when you're heading for travel, and the next scheduled meeting would be December 18th. So I'm wondering if we should try and schedule it a different day. And then we'll have to work with everyone's schedule if we want to do that.
I would appreciate that, but I also understand, if you guys, if we're able to push it up, that would be great.
Okay. I can reach out and try to reschedule December. Let me talk to FACTv, and then I'll reach out to all of you and just see what dates are available and that all of you are available too. No problem.
Sounds good.
All right. And then one last piece I wanted to share with you. When we used the hiring tool, something that came up was the proposed panel members. We talked about the makeup of the hiring team and ensuring that, we have a diverse group of, varying perspectives. We always try to include a community member anytime we have interviews for any position. So we would like to include a community member. We talked about a local 311 member, and the city of Sun Prairie, actually, they're hiring for a police chief right now, and they utilize they do the same thing. They'll reach out to their union to invite a bargaining agent. And this isn't someone who works in Fitchburg Fire. This is someone who works typically, like our bargaining agent works for the City of Madison Fire Department. So it's someone who works closely with the union employees, but is not a City of Fitchburg employee. We talked about Deputy Chief Grossen or a neighboring fire chief. You know, Chief is our interim. He's been with us for 30 years. And so if we can include Chief Grossen in some part of the recruitment process, that'd be wonderful. There's another fire officer from City of Madison. Her name is Eliza Tata. She's a fire officer with Madison Fire Department, and she actually works in the with recruiting. And so that would be an example of someone we could reach out to. So I don't necessarily have names of individuals here. And if you have thoughts, or if you know a community member that would be great to be on the hiring panel, or if you have thoughts about certain municipalities that we should reach out to who have fire expertise. The other last piece is your deputy city administrator or another department head. So we try to always include a department head on other department head recruitments, just as part of the whole panel. The police chief works pretty closely with the fire chief at times. So we could utilize the police chief, or we could invite our deputy city administrator to be on that panel. Those are just examples. And then we talked about the city tour. Our union president would be a wonderful person to have on the city tour, along with a fire science resident intern. So that way you're getting more informal feedback on who these candidates are and what they're all about, because they're not interviewing the person, but they're seeing them in a different way. They're learning about them, and we do gather the feedback from the people who give city tours, because that's really important. That's like a whole nother piece of evaluation. So that's kind of what we talked about when we use the hiring tool as far as panel members go.
So
we don't have to finalize this necessarily. Yeah.
Sorry, we're delayed a little bit. Sorry for interrupting. So were you saying for the local 311 member, you're thinking it's not a Fitchburg firefighter?
Yeah, so local 311, so that's the fire union. So for example, right now we're going through negotiations. I think, is it Pete Fredericks, Jason? His name is, he's our bargaining agent. So there's other bargaining agents or other local 311 members. We would still like to include a Fitchburg fire person a part of the process. That's where Chief Grossen perhaps, or it could be someone else. But I think throughout the process to incorporate Fitchburg fire would be wonderful. Yeah. Jason, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I mean, from 311, it could be, Pete Friedrichs, who's the Secretary Treasurer, Malin Mitchell, who's the local 311 president. He's the state president. He's also now the 5th District Vice President of the IFF. If 311 gets a seat at the table, I'll find someone from local 311. Ted Higgins was our old Secretary Treasurer. He'd be a phenomenal person, but we can find somebody.
But these are people who are paid by the union, right?
Well, they're paid because of their position. So, like Secretary Treasurer, yeah, they're paid. I'm paid by the union to be the representative for Fitchburg. So, if you want a non-paid member, there's plenty of those too. But so whatever you guys want, it's just we were looking at that as an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want a
interesting
Fitchburg firefighter as part of the panel. I think, in addition to a command staff, because I think those are two different important, perspectives to get. I don't necessarily think a paid union person should be on our panel, in my view.
Paid by the union, or is paid full-time firefighter?
Paid by the union.
So we can put a 311 member who's a Fitchburg firefighter on that panel. Yeah, they're not paid by the union.
That would be really helpful. I think that's the best kind of panel member.
And that's fine. I mean, that's I was just throwing out the Secretary Treasurer, all those guys. If you want a 311 member who's a Fitchburg firefighter, we can get one of those too. They're not compensated by the union.
Yeah. Are all firefighters members of the union?
The full-time staff is yes,
Okay.
minus the chiefs, the battalion chiefs and Mark there and Chief Grossen, but all the firefighters, all the lieutenants are represented by Local 311.
Well, they're represented, but are they all members and dues-paying members?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Yeah, my thought is, I think a Fitchburg firefighter would be helpful for the panel, in addition to command staff, Chief Grossen or some of the other command staff. I think would be good.
Agreed.
But that's, Sarah, you're thinking, those are, the formal decisions are for the December meeting or January meeting is what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, technically there isn't a rush to have to reach out because we're not going to know any dates, until we know how many applicants we get. But we know we're going to have interviews. We know we'll have the virtual interviews at the end of February. So January still gives us plenty of time. So, or even December if that matters. So yeah, we have plenty of time to think about this a little bit. So yeah, December we can actually take action on this. So what I'll do is I'll send this PowerPoint over along with all the other things that I shared, the draft survey. And the other thing I want to show you is the advertisements. And I'd love your feedback if you see any places that we're missing on here. We posted our last high-level fire position at a number of these sites. We have typical. Do you see my screen? Does it say proposed advertisements?
Yep.
For fire chief? Okay, perfect. So we have a list of local diversity sites that we share all of our job openings on. Some of them are websites, some of them we have contacts with. And then the fire industry, the city of Sun Prairie, by using the hiring tool, gave us about 5. These 4 for sure weren't on our list. And this was the other one. So it was really, really wonderful having that meeting because we learned of some new places to post our fire positions. But these are fire industry sites. We would have the schools and then others like LinkedIn, League of Municipalities, Indeed, Facebook, Fitchburg Fire site. So if there's any on here that you're like, ooh, we should make sure we advertise here, just let me know. We have a good sized budget that we can spend for the fire chief when it comes to advertising and making sure we're doing good outreach and getting out there. We also like to do targeted emails to people who work in these roles. Maybe they're a deputy chief where they currently are, and invite people to apply. Sometimes just posting things and hoping people see them isn't the answer. So we do a lot of homework on the HR side too, to check out, who's in different roles at different municipalities or different departments, and then reach out and just share with them the job posting in hopes that they'll apply.
Sarah,
So I'll send that list up.
Want to make sure you have Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce. There's also a Madison Black Chamber of Commerce. There's a city one and also a state. So it looked like you were going local, but there's also that distinction right here in town as well as a state one. So Wisconsin.
Yeah, so I have Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce,
and there's Madison.
but I didn't have the Madison.
Yeah,
I didn't have the Madison.
Well, probably,
Thank you.
all chambers of commerce, right?
correct. We could do that, but that was specifically in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, just like the Urban League says, Greater Madison.
Yep.
And there's, State Urban League as well.
Because I think there's a Latino Chamber of Commerce as well.
Mong.
Yep.
So all chambers.
Yep.
All local chambers. 'Cause they have meetings and stuff together.
Yeah. Any suggestions,
Absolutely.
Lieutenant Ladwig or Chief, any suggestions on, other ones that you all know from the profession?
I could share that.
Like where to advertise, where to
Are
advertise?
there publications or,
Yeah, it looked to me like most of them are covered.
LinkedIn and there's Facebook and things like that? Is there a LinkedIn for fire employees?
That's a good question.
Well, we got the
Don't tell people. Oh, okay.
You can
Professional Fires of Wisconsin has a Facebook page, but everybody who's got a LinkedIn can share it, and it gets out by the people that they follow. and Facebook and things like that. So
Okay.
And some of those are free. They let you post because you're part of that group. You can post for free, save some dollars.
I just tried that stableflames.org because I was curious what it was, and it at least on my computer or phone, it's not like pulling anything up, so that maybe we can just check.
well, the Sable Flames is an organization within the City of Madison Fire Department that represents the African American firefighters. That's all that is.
I don't
Thank
think the link is working. So
Yeah, that's a group. Yeah, that's just a group of firefighters.
Okay. Yeah, that's one Sun Prairie gave me. So I'll look to see if I can get some kind of contact if the website isn't working.
And this list isn't exclusive. Oh, sorry, Lieutenant, go ahead.
No, that's fine. There's just different groups of, like the IFF's got like the 5th District, which the state of Wisconsin's part of, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. They've got a Facebook page. The IFF's got a Facebook page. PFFW's got a Facebook page. So as long as it gets out there and it gets shared, the word's going to get out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can keep adding to this. So what I'll do, I can send this to the commissioners, and then I'll share it also with the command staff and the fire department, Jason, you as well. And so if you think of any others that we should add, please add to it. And then, yeah, I'll look at all the chambers and make sure we list all of those, as well as, because I know some of these are pretty, they're more pointed because they're people we've established relationships with or organizations. And so if you don't see them listed here, it's because we haven't established a relationship yet where we're always sharing our job postings and that. Okay. So how does everyone feel? Any questions about the fire chief process? Any concerns about timeline, the process, anything you want me to look at for December besides bringing what was on that PowerPoint?
I think very thorough. Thank you, Sarah, for putting it all together and for working through it kind of early so that we're ready to go as soon as the EMS decision is made.
Absolutely. And as soon as I hear back from Mayor, I have a meeting with her Friday afternoon. I will let the commission know, maybe I'm assuming there'll be some kind of update sent out. Either she'll be giving some update or Chad but before you just see it on a job posting at a commission meeting.
Any other thoughts or questions on the chief recruitment process?
Is there, I guess the only thing I had was relative to the virtual panel interview. I don't like virtual when you're talking about interviewing for a fire chief or any chief leadership position. I think it's just a different interaction. So is that do you think that's a must-have? I don't think it's asking too much for a candidate to come to Fitchburg twice, if that's the goal. Trying to cut the process from 2 visits to 1. I don't think it's asking too much for them to come here in person twice, personally, for this level of a position. But talk just briefly again why we think the panel interview process is the right way to get the first interview done. Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So when we use the hiring tool, that was one of the things that came up. We don't reimburse candidates for travel. So that's one thing that we don't do. We don't pay for their stay here, their travel expenses. And there's time that they have to take off from work to travel here. So, let's pretend we have 8. We bring it down to 8 people and we have 8 interviews to give. That's an awful lot of people, to be bringing in. And then they have to come. There's not a right or wrong way to do it, but we're trying to eliminate any barriers, whether that's the cost of travel, the virtual interviews. I know they're not always, it's nice to be in person, right? You just get a different feel for the candidates. They can see Fitchburg. If we did move it back to in person, we would have to do the 2-day event because we wouldn't want them to have to come 2 totally different times. Like my recommendation then would be to have it 2 days back to back, where then you have the first panel interviews. We let them know at the end of the day whether they're invited back for the next day. That's how we did the administrator and the police chief. When we did those 2 recruitments, we had 2 back-to-back days. But I would just be apprehensive of having them, fly here for 1 interview and then 2 weeks later flying back for the in-person activities. So if we do require them to be here in person, I would definitely suggest we do it back-to-back so that they can get the first panel interview done and then the next day it's like the in-person activities.
Do you think there's preparation required from the panel interview to the next stage? If they find out at 6 o'clock on one night that they're being invited back the next day, is there more prep that they would want to do that wouldn't be able to happen in 12 hours? Not really.
No, not necessarily. So remember, when we post this position, we're going to have the recruitment timeline and process in there. So we're going to already have that the tentative interview day, or will be the week of. We might not have the actual date yet, but they're going to know exactly how the recruitment process is going to go. And so with that, they'll already know about their presentation, what they're going to be having to do at the public reception. So we try to give them as much preparation time when we post the position, because nothing's worse than applying for a job and not knowing, okay, how's this process going to be? So, and then we would let them know that it's a potential 2-day, that we always let them know at the end of the day if they'll be invited back the following day as a finalist. So as long as we communicate that, which we have done in the past, it's worked out pretty well for us in the past.
And Sarah, you mentioned that we did this for the administrator role and maybe police chief, as I think, which said with the back-to-back.
Yep.
Did people say it was a barrier, and did people have an issue with it?
Well, they didn't say it was a barrier because we had it back to back. The barrier would be if we have the interviews and then we have them have to come here in person, and then 2 weeks later they got to come back again. So, no. So since we haven't done that before, I haven't heard that. But I'm making the assumption. I think it's a safe assumption that having to take the time out, paying for a plane ride here, paying for lodging, just to have to come back and do it 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later. It's, I know it's for a job opportunity, but it's something to consider, that it might be a barrier for some people, or a challenge, I guess.
Yeah.
I know we've been talking about this, but it's just popping in my head. Day 1 and day 2 are distinctly different for what the panelists would do. And it only gives that first round, here's what you could do, and then if you pass it, you don't pass it, you don't have the opportunity for the day 2. So there's, different styles of how people are. And for whatever reason, we decided not to do some of the first ones. The second day, we don't know how they would have done on that second distinctive process. But I get that it's worked before, but I guess we have to really know what's that criteria that would make you not go the second day. Is it in the interview process, or is it part of the screening? And if it's part of the screening, then maybe that you don't invite people to that first process a little bit more than the reduction being so much where you can't come the second day. It just kind of sounds.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Let me share, I want to share with you the PowerPoint that I shared at the last meeting, Sean and everyone, just so you can see what the 2 back-to-back days looked like. Having problems sharing the right screen, so bear with me here.
Come to the interview, they say, oh, no, not you, don't come back tomorrow.
Yeah, that's tough.
Usually you get a little while when they tell you we've got somebody else. Then, okay,
Let's
no,
see.
not today. Then.
Yeah, enjoy your time.
Not wanting to share for some reason. I'm not really sure why.
Don't come back tomorrow.
You're not gonna travel because you're gonna, in hopes that you're gonna be back the next day. So if you don't get up, you're gonna be sitting around in Madison until the following
Right.
for your flight.
You'll probably come to the open
Yeah.
public appearance for the candidates that made it.
That's right.
Sit in the audience.
While Sarah's pulling that down, I mean,
Can you see a PowerPoint?
I don't know.
Not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if this should have been closed.
Oh, boy. Hang tight.
while Sarah's looking for that, I too I don't like virtual. I think this is an important role for the city, of course. And it would be nice to get more FaceTime and in-person time and opportunities for others to have that in-person time, but balanced against the cost. I see, that is certainly can be a barrier. And that leads me to, if the 2-day thing has worked in the past, it's still a little kind of, odd, that they might not be wanted around the second day and there's not a lot of time for them to prepare and stuff. But if it's worked in the past, and I think there's value in having as many people see the candidate in person because it's such a big role.
Can they come the second day? Is that just too convoluted?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's if we get more than 8 candidates, there will be a screening process. And,
Exactly. The screening process will be those essay questions.
and that's reviewed by not us, some third-party group, a panel that we talk to and appoint, and then they recommend 8 candidates to us. Those 8 would come in for the professional panel interview with, like that list of people that we had, kind of the types of classes of people that we want, and we can pick that panel as well.
Yep.
And then that's what I think would whittle down, and then they would make recommendations to us, the PFC, like that first night, and then we would whittle it down based on those recommendations to the second day period.
So it would work. So this is a copy of how we did the police chief and the city administrator. So interview day 1. So after the essay question review, and we've identified less than 8 people, all of those people will come in for the first day. It will be a professional panel interview with the panel members we discussed for 1 hour. And then they'll do a meet and greet with the mayor and the administrator. And then they'll do a meet and greet with fire staff at the fire station. Afterwards, the PFC actually, so this is where we'll insert a special meeting of the PFC to meet with HR and the mayor and the administrator to discuss the candidates and identify the finalists for the following day. So think of interview day 2 as the finalist. And then the first step would be an interview with the Police and Fire Commission, and then a city tour, and then the public reception. So candidates are contacted at the end of day 1 to let them know if they'll be invited as a finalist for the following day. So all of this is communicated on the job posting and in the interview invite that it is a potential 2-day process, but you're only invited to day 2 if you're a finalist. So it's worked out pretty well. Of course, it's a little awkward calling someone at the end of day 1 to let them know they're not moving forward. It's not my most favorite calls to make, but if we really wanted people to be here in person and to make it efficient, we could basically copy what we've done in the past with the police chief and the city administrator and have this back-to-back day process. And I know I brought this up last time, but I know you might be wondering, well, how come the Police and Fire Commission are on interview day 2? We could have you meet with them on day 1. It's just that you potentially might be interviewing 8 people, where if you let the professional panel interview get through those 8 interviews, you might be looking at 3 to 4 people you're interviewing, the true finalists for the fire chief position. So that's why you're on day 2, or that's why we've designed it like this in the past.
So, but that's not what you're proposing this time. So what would be?
Yeah, so we did, yeah,
Would
so.
everything on day
Yep,
1
so after you.
be virtual in what we're looking at right now? Is that your proposal?
No. So, I'll share the other. I got 2 different PowerPoints. So, when we use the equitable hiring tool, that was the thing that we decided. Well, maybe it would be best to just have virtual interviews for the first panel interviews. And if that's the case, we can do that a couple of weeks before the actual in person. So, picture your Zoom virtual interviews a couple weeks after we do the essay review, and then they're invited for in-person activities. And the in-person activities is your police and fire commission interview. It's your city tour. It's your meet and greet with the mayor and administrator, the meet and greet with fire staff, and then ending the day with a public reception.
So the only.
So if you recall when I shared, yeah.
Sorry. The only thing on that slide that
You go ahead.
would propose would be virtual, would be the first bullet point, the professional panel interview. And then the rest.
No, in this process, everything would be in person. We wouldn't have anything virtual.
Right.
This is what was proposed.
So let's talk about what you're proposing.
But yeah, but in your proposal, Sarah, if we were to go along with this newest recommendation, everything that was on that slide except for the professional panel would be in person. The professional panel is the only thing that would be virtual, right?
So I'm gonna bring up the PowerPoint that I showed you when we first started the meeting. So what's probably confusing to you is both PowerPoints look exactly the same. What has changed is the slide about what we're doing if we move to a virtual first interview. So bear with me. I'm gonna bring up that slide so it's just a little more clear for you. 1 second. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so here's the PowerPoint that I started today out with. This is the updated timeline and process if we went with the hiring tool. So, we started the timeline where basically, we have the essay review. If we get more than 8 people, that we'll hold that the February 10th. And then we'll go on to have our virtual first interview via Zoom with a professional panel for 1 hour. And we can do this the week of February 24th or the week of February 17th if we don't need to review essay questions. Everything hinders on how many applicants we get. And then the in-person activities. So week of March 10th or the week of March 3rd, depends on essay questions. We would have our interview with Police and Fire Commission for 1 hour, meet and greet with mayor and administrator, the city tour, meet and greet. All this is in person when it's in-person activity. So the only change would be that our first panel interviews are strictly virtual. But then once we've identified, you go ahead.
So not necessarily true. You're whittling it down from 8 to whatever the finalists are from day 1 to day 2. In this example, you've got all 8 coming for everything. When do we whittle it down for the finalists?
No, this is when we whittle it down. So this is where we invite all 8 at the virtual first interview. This is held the week of February 24th or February 17th. Then the finalists are here for the in-person activities.
So you've streamlined then the 2-day approach. The virtual, I think this is the point Tom was making, it appears to be just a professional, because on your virtual slide in this deck, but in your other slide, your 2-day approach, there are much more activities that happen on day 1. You have this
exactly,
virtual,
because here we're exactly. So if I'm gonna go back to that other slide just so you can kind of see the difference. It's nice for you to see the difference because there's 2 different approaches we can take here. And so this one, and there's more than that, you might think of some other ways we can do this. Here's what we've always done. So interview day, so we wouldn't have any virtual. We're making them come in for 2 days, but they may not be needed on day 2. So that first day we're having, potentially 8 interviews with the professional panel in person. They then go meet with the mayor and the administrator, then they meet with the fire staff. So you're right, in this approach, more candidates get to meet more people, right? It's potentially 8 people meeting with the mayor, the administrator, the fire department. Whereas the other one, you're truly just bringing in, probably 3, 4, 5 people who are truly considered finalists because they got through that first panel interview virtually, and they're going on to these in-person, or they're going into the in-person activities in the other slide.
So you're going to get less feedback about the individual. With this approach, you get more feedback from different folks like the mayor, the administrator. With the virtual, it's all coming down to the panel, professional panels making that decision.
Yeah.
Who to eliminate.
100%. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I guess my preference.
I don't like that, right? This has a much more thorough, plus the PFC has a say, right? The last third bullet point says, we now meet with HR, mayor, administrator, and identify the finalists.
Yeah.
In the streamlined version, no mayor, no administrator, no PFC. So we're out of the mix until we get the final 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know if I like it.
You're exactly right.
Yeah, I don't like it. I prefer the old traditional way, I guess.
Okay.
And I also think it's not.
I'm glad we talked about it. This is good.
It shouldn't be. Do we provide relocation assistance to out-of-state hirees or hire?
Up to 2,000. Yeah, for department head only, for department heads that relocate up to $2,000. So it's not a lot.
So I would say that's the bigger barrier. If I'm an out-of-state applicant and I have to move my family to the state, that's a barrier. And I've already noticed that, and I'm still applying, so I'm accepting that barrier. If we're not going to provide them meaningful assistance to move, then we're not providing them assistance to come interview. I don't know if I'm worried about the barrier that causes, because the bigger barrier is now I got to move my whole family across the country for virtually no assistance. I don't know if that tracks for me. If we're not.
No, that makes total sense. And going with the 2 days that was just shown, it's back to back, so it's not necessarily a barrier because we're not making them come in twice, right? They come in and for up to 2 days. They might be invited in for day 2. So either way, we can structure this in a way where we're not requiring someone to fly here and then 2 or 3 weeks later fly here again.
Yeah, I honestly
hope that makes
like
sense.
that approach. Spreading the 2 days out for in person. Yeah. First day is a week or 2 weeks, let's say, before, the second visit. I like the back-to-back days. I get that the candidates who don't get invited for day 2 are probably sticking around in Madison because they would have booked their travel with the anticipation that they needed to be here for the second day. So that's a bummer, but that's a risk. But I like the back-to-back because it's more robust. There's more meetings and conversations, and the PFCs engaged day 1, at least talking to the mayor and before we actually meet the candidates. So yeah, I'm in favor of back-to-back 2 days, more than I am the virtual. I think I'm getting why the virtual is under consideration.
Yeah.
I think I lean more towards the 2-day back-to-back.
Well, how about, this has been really helpful. Sarah's got it all laid out on slides. Maybe, Sarah, if you could share the slides, and then, this is recorded, of course, on FACTv. Maybe we can all take a peek at this discussion again before the December meeting. Mm-hmm. And then in December, I think, is when you had planned, Sarah, to kind of lock it in so that we can tell the candidates what the plans are. We can.
Exactly. Yep, we'll highlight on the posting. Yep.
Does that work for everyone generally?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Good discussion. Thank you so much for going through that. I love having that dialogue and making sure we're doing this the right way and the right way that you guys think would go well for this time around.
Well, yes, and Sarah, thank you again for all the work. And one thing I'll mention now, and I'll say it throughout the process. It happened in the police chief discussion. There are times when we're all not going to agree. And that is perfectly acceptable as long as it's done in a professional manner and respectful manner with each other, right? And during the police process, we didn't all agree all the time, and that was okay. And it brings that level of kind of different viewpoints and diversity and all that. So if we don't all agree on these issues as they come up, these are the most important issues I believe we deal with as a commission. So that's not a problem, and we can all be respectful and professional about it. Right, any last thoughts on the fire department, fire chief recruitment process? Okay, then our agenda item number 7 is announcements. We mentioned earlier that there's a Fitchburg Law Enforcement Foundation event at Bonfire tomorrow night. I think it's 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, but keep an eye on that. We've got, Chief Leahy was saying, a couple dates, a December 13th graduate date for our 2 individuals who are in the police academy, with likely a December 17th pinning, so that's coming up. And then Chief, or Lieutenant Ladwig, anything on the fire side that's coming up event-wise in the month of December?
We do have our lighted truck parade here in town. Sorry, Jason.
Yeah, the fire truck. I think we're going to do Toys for Tots again in the firehouse. I'm working with the union on that, so I will send an email out to you guys like I did last year once I have confirmation on that, but nothing else.
Yeah, and we have our local lighted fire truck parade or with all of the city trucks, so we'll have something on display at Station 1. Other than that, we've got a few public education events, smaller public education events, but nothing really large planned.
Very good. Any other announcements? Okay, then agenda item number 8, I believe, is adjournment. Any motions?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Nice. I'll second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, thanks for joining us online.
Thanks.